you I was moving on over you.
A whole new grid is coming, and it's a smart grid. This is really important for our kids. So Accenture has brought some energy experts from around the world to answer their questions. So have a look.
What's different now about the way we use energy?
We are using today so much energy compared to any earlier days.
Now we use it for heating, cooling, eating, refrigerating, talking to each other, computers, games, everything.
Entire livelihoods depend on requiring electricity to be on all the time.
但是随着经济的发展，我们过多的可能使用了我们地球上有限的能源资源。
Every city in the world today is only 30% energy efficient, which means that 70% of the energy going into a city is lost.
Our grid is not keeping up, and we're falling behind.
Do you think we'll ever run out of energy?
The fossil energy will run out. We are consuming and we are not generating more.
When there's not enough energy to go around, what will we do?
We'll either need new power plants or we'll need to be smarter about how we use energy. And I think the best choice is to be smarter about how we use it.
The smart grid is a crucial piece of kit to help us manage our energy better.
What is a smart grid?
The grid is a very complex set of wires, poles that allows us to transmit electricity from the source of it being generated all the way into our homes and businesses.
And that is the grid that we're talking about making smarter.
And what makes a smart grid smart?
The utility will know when there's a power outage because they have sensors throughout the grid that will be communicating back to the central office.
It's just like all the other networks we've built before, like the cable network, like the satellite network, like the cell phone network.
Why do we need a smarter grid?
The customers that we have are expecting a better quality of service, and from that we have to deploy newer and smarter technologies on the networks.
If we want to use the renewables, the solar, the wind, the biomass, we need to change the grid as it is today.
The smart grid is really an important tool for the utility industry to make sure that we're able to continue to provide affordable and reliable electricity to as many people as possible.
How will my life change once the grid is smart?
You tell me if you think your life is going to be different. So like if we go out, let's say 20 years from now, and your city has got no noise of any internal combustion engines because it's all powered electric vehicles, the air is less smoggy in your home, your devices, as in your appliances, are able to turn themselves up or down in terms of use of electricity in a way that's convenient to you, but also more energy efficient and more cost efficient for you. Those are the sorts of things that we would expect to see with the advent of a smart grid. So I don't know if you think that's different or not, but I think it's probably better.
Someday soon, many customers will actually become power producers. They'll use solar panels or wind turbines and sell that power right back into the grid.
Making the switch from the old grid to the smart grid, is it hard?
The smart grid is going to be really easy for the consumer. So the consumer, through their laptop or through their smartphone, can see what their usage is. They'll be able to turn appliances on or off. It's the utilities and the companies that provide equipment that will be doing the hard work to make the grid smarter. They're certainly working on that today, and we'll make it happen.
Why do anything at all? Why now?
What we do in the next 10 years will be your future, will be your city, will be your life.
We're on the beginning of a wave, of a brand new set of technologies that can truly change the way we work and we live.
Let's make our life more and more beautiful.
Thank you.
I know you guys are working hard. Thank you.
Good job.
Accenture is working in every part of the globe to deliver on the promise of smart grid.
Okay, well now I'm confused whether I should introduce my panelists as the kids or the rock and rollers. Since the instruments aren't here, and I think we're probably not kids anymore, I'll go ahead and introduce them in a second. But I think what you heard there was a vision, and I was tempted to say as we went through this, oh, promises, promises. Because in fact, we are making these promises to the people who are investing in smart grid. And I think if you look back at what you heard in the opening remarks today, it's fundamentally clear that we're not going to be able to deliver on those promises and to execute the vision of the smart grid without truly, looking at how we do these things from a technological and a cultural and a personal relationship to really operate our utility businesses in a different fashion. And so the topic here is, OT and IT, but I think more importantly, the topic is about breaking down some of the traditional silos in the operations of the energy business, not just the distribution utilities, but even in some of the other market players. And I think what we've got here is a panel of folks who have actually faced many of those challenges. They each have a different perspective on what some of those issues are, and really in their own businesses have made strides towards achieving some more of the integration across silos than a lot of the counterparts because of what they've been doing in their own particular businesses. So I'm going to go ahead and briefly introduce each one of these guys and ask them to give a couple minutes of opening remarks. We're going to go through some questions. If we have time, we'll try and take some questions from the audience as well. But I'll start off with Kenny Mercado. And Kenny is the Senior Vice President of Grid and Market Operations for CenterPoint Energy in Texas. Then we have Bill Mingy from Kansas City Power and Light, who is the Director of the Smart Grid Programs at Kansas City Power and Light. And we have Tom Kindred, who is the CIO of SAS Power up in Saskatchewan, Canada. And then we have Wade Malcolm, part of the Accenture team and one of our sponsors for the event here. Thank you very much for the previous entertainment. So again, each of these guys has a slightly different perspective on how the systems, how the processes have to be integrated. Their business models are a little bit different. Of course, we have Wade as a consultant who's advised utilities globally. But what I'd like to do is sort of go through the journey of, well, what have been some of the issues historically? What are we doing about them? Why are we doing these things? And then, what are some of the things that they've learned about this process that I think could be beneficial to the audience? So we're going to be fairly informal, ask a few questions, and just try to get a dialogue going. So again, if there's going to be questions, we'll try to save some time to get some input from you guys as well. So I want to start off with Kenny. And I picked Kenny, and I told him this because specifically his title, Senior Vice President, Grid and Market Operations, right? That kind of says a lot to me because we're talking both about the grid and we're talking about the consumer market, as we heard about from Chairman Wellinghoff. So I think to me that sort of signifies that maybe there's been some progress at CenterPoint on, examining those barriers and thinking about what maybe should be changed. So Kenny, do you want to kick us off and comment on some of the things that historically?
I'd be happy to do that. Thank you, Lars. Lars and I have been together for probably 7-8 years, so it's nice to be here. Thank you, the Siemens team, for bringing us together. I think it's wonderful to see this audience. I know you all are highly charged on this topic and very interested and probably really engaged in what we have to say. I was thinking for a moment about what is IT/OT, and when I was listening to the band play this morning, I kind of put it together. It hit me. The guys back there in the back, that's your IT guys, right? They're doing all the technology work and got all the gadgets and whatnot, doing all the communications. Guys up here in the front, this is the OT. These are the technology guys playing those bands, playing the band, really getting into the music and doing the field work, really making the work happen in the field. So when you think about IT/OT and we start to merge those into one, that's I think what this purpose of today's discussion is. One of the songs they played was from the band Journey. How many of y'all recognize the Journey band? Right? Love Journey. I go back to the 80s and enjoy the music from Journey. But I want to leave that word with Lars with us today. I think that this is a journey. I mean, we're really going from kind of an old utility-based environment, and not to be critical about it at all, but an environment built on legacy, built on old software systems, built on very tailor-made, very specialized, and we're converting in a rapid pace. We're converting to a very new, off-the-shelf, standardized, highly functional world. And as utilities, we have to swallow all this. There's a lot for us to have to inject into our systems and try to make it successful. So this is a journey that we're going through. And I'll back up just for a moment and tell you that I've been in the utility industry for 28 years now. We've worked very hard in the areas of our utility infrastructure over the years to be as efficient and cost focused as we could around employees and making sure we have the right level of management and employees, around process, and around the use of technology. I mean, we've been using technology for 30 years. This is not new in this space. But the focus of that technology and those processes and the very efficient management of people is really in a silo. Whether you worked in the transmission area of the utility, or you worked in the distribution area, or you worked in the metering area, or you worked in information technology, or if you worked in customer service, it's all silos. And unfortunately, it goes one way, right? So it eventually all comes down and falls in the face of customer service because they don't have a clue what happened upstream, but the customers are yelling downstream. They want answers. And so that's the product that we've been using for a long, long period of time. And now today, we're really kind of revolutionizing. I think you're seeing this evolving journey where the systems that our vendors are providing to the utility industry are going to allow us to operate across the chain in a very efficient, transparent, real-time real-time environment, so that everybody knows what's going on at every moment of every day. So it's a big, big change, and I know everyone in this room is feeling those changes in your environment where you work. And my comment to you is, when I came to work here 28 years ago, I was an electrical engineer doing electrical engineering work, and I pretty much felt like I was doing the same kind of work as the guy that was here 10 years before me, the guy that was here 10 years before him. It really hadn't changed much. But when we hire an electrical engineer today, that electrical engineer's got a whole different outlook of how to operate the grid because of the new digitized level of performance that we're providing over this journey. So I'll leave it with that, but I think it's a very exciting time. This is the best time in my career to be in this space. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Bill? I'm Bill Mengy from Kansas City Power and Light. KCP&L has had a long history of applying technology. I think Larsh actually was there when we were serial number 1 for Cellnet's automated meter reading AMR system back in the early 90s. We're at the point now we're ready to replace that technology. And again, a lot of customizations in there that are ready to go, that we need to work more on standards today. Most of my time today is spent leading our smart grid demonstration project, and going off what Kenny had to say, our project is basically everything that anybody here would consider below the transmission level. You say, well, I think that's part of the smart grid. Outside of prepay, and people will debate whether that's smart grid or not, but is part of our project. And so we're going across all these silos, and we realize that the silos, a lot of times, they don't even have a window that you can look into to see what's happening on the other side. So, we've had a lot of cross-cultural, cross-functional learnings going on through the project. We do have the benefit of it being a demonstration project, so it's not a system-wide thing. So we're able to take the learnings, and as we go forward, be able to apply them to what we're going to do as we go system-wide with more of these systems as we move forward. So again, I'm an electrical engineer as well, and I think that we had a lot of people also back in the days when I was coming up where I learned from that guy that sat there. Well, today, when you come up, that guy's not even there anymore to learn from. So
unless it's Lisa's grandfather.
Right. We need, and we do have engineers that do make those calls back to those guys to go, hey, do you remember this thing? In fact, we have a system protection engineer retiring today. That will be a pain for us to get through to replace his knowledge. So as the systems are able to cover more of those things and be more and more interoperable, plug and play, those things, we're not quite there yet. Plug and play sounds awfully nice. We're not quite there yet, but that's where we need to go. And basing things on standards and interoperable systems is going to really help make that cross function there. Recently, we're looking at putting an OMS system in, and the person that runs our distribution system operations, he commented about where our real-time systems group would be, and there was a retirement there, and he says, well, maybe you want that. And I'm like, wow, it's bad enough to be the guy that has to run the operations, and so a storm rolls through and you called in the middle of the night and you got to go take care of that. Today, the IT guy has multiple storms. He has to be ready for that storm. And they now are a very integral part of when we have a traditional thunderstorm, tornado, whatever it is rolled through. IT is a very integral part of making sure that that operation works, whereas back in the day, were the bills going out? Did we have to stop CIS in the middle of the night? That was pretty much the only concern of the IT. Now it's all integrated and everything touches everything else, and the operational guys are very reliant on IT systems, and outage in IT is as important as an outage to customers or a major outage in a substation or on a line.
Tom?
Good. Hey, Tom Kindred with SAS Power from Canada. For those in the room that aren't aware where Saskatchewan is, we're the middle of Canada. We're about the size of Texas. We have more telephone poles and power poles than we do people. And we operate from -40 to +40 degrees Fahrenheit. So some pretty extremes there to manage a grid and a power industry. We're end-to-end vertically integrated power company, so right from the generation, transmission, distribution. So tying all this together, I joined SAS Power about 4 years ago. My background is electrical engineering and also electronic information systems engineering. And I happened to, many years ago, start off in the telecommunication industry that's gone through very similar transformation. If you think of way back when in the 80s, analog moving to digital, right? That doesn't sound like a big thing, but it was the same issue we have today. You had the digital folks and you had the analog folks, and they were two different camps. And the analog folks believed that there's going to be a renaissance of the analog world, and it never did happen. I remember doing presentations on digital technologies and that, and people in the audience saying, well, when are you going to bring out some more analog stuff? You guys are always bringing out this digital stuff. And I don't know what happened to that individual, but it certainly made me realize that things were changing and for good. I moved into the bank industry, was there for 10 years, and ended up at Bank of America in Canada. And again, through similar changes as well. If you think about the banking industry and moving from brick and mortar into customer self-service, how many people in the room here would rather go in and deposit money versus use remote services? I know for me, remote services would be the way I go. In fact, a lot of us probably haven't been to a bank in the past year here. So the things are changing, and not to repeat what my colleagues have said here, but the other thing that's changing is our consumers and our employees. And if we think about the consumerization of devices, you used to come to work to get the most sophisticated tools or devices you had. If you wanted a cell phone, you got that at work. You certainly didn't have your kids running around the school ground with a cell phone. And if you wanted a computer, you came to work for that to get the most advanced one. Now you have your employees that are coming that, they have wireless networks at home, they store their music in the cloud, they have the most advanced wireless devices, and they're used to working that way. And to say, no, you can't work that way because we're a utility and haven't quite got there, I think that's going to add another change to this whole OT-IT convergence. And what does the worker of tomorrow look like? What does the worker of today look like that's replacing these people that are leaving, that have been with us 35, 45 years? How do we educate the employees of tomorrow that don't want to work for 45 years? In fact, you talk to them and you say, if you work really hard, you can be here 35 years. Their eyes roll back in their heads. So we got to get them in and get them productive so that they can have a good career, and probably looking at a 10-year sort of career with our company. So I'll just, with that, maybe use that as an opening.
Wade?
Yeah, I'm Wade Malcolm with Accenture, and can't speak to a particular utility experience singularly. I've actually been involved in our grid operations practices. I've been involved actually with some of you in the room and many other companies working with you on these types of projects. And from an IT/OT perspective, we talk about silos being the issue. I think we're seeing as a shifting of silos. We're still going to have to deal with regulated versus non-regulated, which I think you probably have to do with your markets role as well. We talked about security in some of the earlier sessions, and certainly critical infrastructure has been at least flagged in North America as something that has to be treated a little bit differently. Although you may opt not to treat it differently, it might be an audit and a reporting issue for you as well. But when we look at the silos, I mean, fundamentally, People want to bash the silos, knock them down. They were created out of separate needs in the past. I mean, technology wasn't the same in the early days of moving from mechanical systems to applying automated technology to the operation side. And a lot of that technology looked quite a bit different than the enterprise information technology did at that time. But I think the industry is facing two issues right now. One is that the underlying platforms are becoming more similar. The supporting technologies are very similar. While some of the update schedules and some of the other issues aren't necessarily the same, and at the same time, the industry is dealing with some industry-wide pressures on environmental issues, as well as customer choice and other aspects of market evolution as well. And both of these things really lend to the need to share data across the organization. Many of you have been involved in putting in smart meters. You have ubiquitous sensing and ubiquitous communications now. And you're finding that data that was only used for billing in the past has value in a lot of other organizations. The process of sharing that data points to the needs to change the organizational structures, the silos that are there today, so that you can make effective use of the investments that you have.
So I think we've been talking a lot about, sort of the issues of the silos, right, and some of the history, and I think we can agree that there are good reasons that those silos developed the way they are. And I guess my coming in assumption was that, we could say, well, smart grid is the driver for all of this, and I think what I've heard here is maybe it's not. So I don't know, Tom, you sound like you've seen some other drivers for this sort of, let's say, breaking down or reintegration of some of the utility operations.
Well, there's no doubt that the smart grid is one of the big drivers, but aging infrastructure, I think, is, certainly when you replace old infrastructure in a power plant, and the new stuff that's coming out is all computer-based, IP-enabled. You have a plant that's 50 years old that's been working well, and then you upgrade it. Well, the people who used to work on those things don't know how to support the stuff, the new stuff, how to do patches, how to keep that current. And we did touch on the when we say aging assets, perhaps the people that are moving on that have been with our companies a long time, and a lot of knowledge here that is walking out the door. I think one of the things that certainly we're seeing in Canada, and I suppose it is elsewhere, is that when people retire nowadays, I'm not so sure it's like previous generations where people just want to say, okay, I'm done and hit the beach. I think there's people that want to transition into retirement. So is there an opportunity to capture some of that knowledge and have people, I don't know, the vision we have is perhaps be available as subject matter expertise to the young folks that are there today. So something we're trying to do is put, high-speed wireless everywhere that our workers are out there. In fact, their trucks are becoming Wi-Fi hotspots. And the idea behind that is they're not tethered to their truck. It's not laptops and trucks. I think that's sort of the evolutionary path. You start there, but the next generation is, how do they get access to all the information they need? How do they call in a friend when they need a friend? How do they look at the equivalent of YouTube videos on your company and how to do processes? That's what they're used to. They're not used to plowing through classroom materials. So how do they call in a retired person that's willing to work for a couple days a week to provide that assistance?
I think just adding on to what Tom said in his introductory remarks was, he talked about analog versus digital. We're at that same juncture here where we've been very, very good at maintaining analog systems. We all have experts. The guy I talked about that's retiring today, he's an expert at that. Today you can't buy an electromechanical relay. So you're going to see that some of it's being driven by the fact that the technology is moving at a pace, and vendors aren't even going to be providing things that will allow you to operate just within your silo.
Absolutely. And I wanted to follow up something you said earlier, because I think you found yourself looking at more silos than you might have expected within just even your smart grid project, right? You were looking at how you were going to do some of this. And what are some of the things that maybe surprised you as you started looking into trying to do some integration across your organization?
Well, I think that some of it was just, a good portion of it is just traditional human nature. And before we had this IT/OT silo thing, we had lots of silos. All utilities had. Other companies had silos, and trying to get over into the other side, it's like, well, just leave me alone, stay over there, or you go talk to my boss, and then by the time it gets down to me, nothing will happen. So, one of the things that we've encountered on our project is, the needing to touch so many of those silos, and the fact that we're doing a demonstration and we're not going enterprise with all the things we're doing is it's been very easy for parties to say, well, you're just kind of working in the sandbox. Do I really need to play along? As opposed to approaching it as, this is a great learning opportunity. We really should be trying to learn. And one of the ways that we've circumvented that is we've used outside help. This is a shame to say this, but some of the most productive people on my project are contractors, because that's their job. And when something breaks in the background, either be it traditional operations or something breaks in the background, bills aren't going out, the contractor's still there working on my project. So that's been a good leveling effect, and it brings some outside knowledge in. Of course, there's always some friction that goes along with that, but I think we need to, as utilities, be a little more open to bringing that in. And it's, as you're bringing these systems in and you're integrating them, my new mantra is integration is hard. I know the Siemens people want to say it's easy, but integration is hard. And guys like Accenture or folks that are doing system integration, or even Siemens Wing that does integration, they do that for a living. And we operate a utility for a living. So, bringing that outside help in that specializes in that area can help circumvent and get you through some of those silos, at least while you're bringing the systems up. Now, you still have to be able to go through change management to be able to operate them.
I was just going to add another driver to what was said earlier, and I think it's the one that is most important and the silent factor in all of the work that we do. But yet, if we're going to be successful over time, we're going to have to lift up this one driver and bring it into light and make sure that we recognize the purpose. Yesterday we heard a comment that said there's $1.2 trillion, I think it was, $1.3 trillion that's going to be invested in this grid technology over the next 20 plus years. $1.2 trillion, that's a lot of money. If the customer doesn't recognize the benefit of that investment, I don't think we're going to make it. I think we're going to come up short. We're going to have to pull our poker chips off the table and go to something else. And so what we really have to continue to think about is, what is the driving purpose of the benefits of, or the functionality of this technology, and how do we translate that into a language that the customer really gets. And so when I see this term IT, OT, I get a little lost there, because in our world now, we just call it technology. We don't really worry too much about if it's in-house or out-house or whatever. We call it technology, and we put a slash by there, and you need to put customer technology in there, customer service technology. But we have a slide that shows consumers today where they're all real time. Half of you right now are looking at your phones, aren't you? Raise your hand. And the reason is because you got to have that information right now. You got to have the information. You can't wait 30 minutes. You got to have it right now. So customers have got this driving impulse to get information right now. Utilities are so far behind that world. We're not even close. We're so far behind. So we've got to get our customer technology systems in place to where, as we digitize our grids and we provide real valuable information that helps us operate and manage the grid, that we can also translate that into a language where the customer says, thank you, I appreciate that, and let me reply back to you with a little bit more requests. It could be around their energy usage. It could be around their thermostat at their house. It could be around the outage that just took place that's going to cause them a problem at their home. Whatever the event is, how well are we communicating with them? And oh, by the way, they don't want a telephone anymore. Right. They want an email. They want I don't know what they want. They want all kinds of ways. So you got to be able to hit multiple channels at all times, and that is tough in today's world. Very, very tough for you.
So I was actually teeing up to ask you a question to follow that one up, because I think the next question I want to ask, I'm going to address it to Wade, because the people issue in the organization and the organizational structure to do what you've just outlined, right, is a big one. And I think it's part of the silos, but it's how do you organize, right? How do you look at successfully trying to move an organization and the people towards this and the change management? So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a key point. You asked a moment ago, is it just the smart grid that's driving some of this? And I mean, we heard there's a variety of issues around demographics as well as external forces that are affecting and creating this opportunity for this large technology investment. But we really can't afford to just replace in kind, which is traditionally what we've done until we've hit key milestones like, Bill, I think you mentioned the analog to digital transition. We're in another one of those again. And the increasing need for customer focus. So what we really see is that for folks to benefit from the technology investment, they need to look at their business processes. They need to restructure. They need to implement change management so that it doesn't become a replacement in kind. I think, Bill, you mentioned you're in the process of going to a new outage management system. I mean, I think about when I worked at Pico Energy years and years ago, when a storm hit and there were outages, there were a few smart people in the room. This is, again, decades ago, but those few smart people in the room had limited data to work with, but they knew the system, they had operational experience, they made a lot of the decisions, they communicated it to their operational staff, but it took a long time to get that information out to the customer folks, and there was really never any checks and balances because of the nature of the way the information was available and shared. I don't think today we could do that in a main storm. If you look at Superstorm Sandy, if you look at many of the hurricanes, you have to, in real time, communicate the status of your system with a variety of internal and external stakeholders in a way that wasn't done 20 years ago. And it's really in that context that trying to find a way to take advantage of these advanced technologies that we have the opportunity to install. And what we found is you can very easily get mired in organizational debate. What does this do to my organization? What does it do to me? And so what we found is you really have to kind of look at the corporate objectives, determine what functions need to take place to meet those corporate objectives, and use that functional drive as a way to restructure the organization rather than look at traditional pieces. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in system operations that's very dependent on IT technologies. We had a client that their IT organization was upgrading modem firmware and digital cellular modems on their SCADA system at the same time a storm was about to roll through. It wasn't a very comfortable situation. So you need to have that kind of coordination, and you need to take it beyond that and really find a way to leverage this. And so what we're finding is a coordinated business process redesign activity combined with change management, tracking with that technology investment, really allow us to get to the objectives of making the customer and other external stakeholders, municipal agencies, as well as other operating groups within the utility more informed, as Ken had mentioned.
If I was to jump on that, is I think a lot of the IT organizations in the power industry, a lot of them have historically been transactional IT departments, and desktop, CIS systems, things like that. And then all of a sudden tell your operations folks that these people are going to come in and help work on the critical infrastructure, their eyes sort of glaze back in their head again. And so I think for us, our big thing at SAS Power was to get the trust. And part of getting the trust is understanding. Mm-hmm. And so some of the things we had to do is get rid of all of the IT magazines and the IT mindsets in IT and start putting in, Power World and different magazines to start people seeing that. We had people that had been
the vocabulary.
Well, exactly. We had people that had been in our IT organization for 15 years and never been to a power plant. So we send buses every...
That's a good question for the audience. How many people here have been to a power plant? All right, good for you.
So we send buses 4 times a year to different power stations around the province and the substations. And the rule is you just have to work for us for 1 year and only one. And we send vendors as well. Mm-hmm. So the idea is how do you get that trust, and I think more strategically getting entwined with where the business wants to go with technology. And a lot of times the business is too busy doing their business to understand what that evolution and path looks like. How do you move from smart grid? How do you move to advanced distribution management system? How do you move to all the technologies, asset management, et cetera? And how do they all interlink? So I think part of the challenge with that has been, bring together the stuff that makes sense. That's how we started. There's the no-brainer stuff. I say that, but there's a lot of challenge in that. But there's things like your communications networks, your data centers, your bridges, your firewalls, the underlying infrastructure, servers, routers. Those things you can get a lot of efficiencies and you can share a lot of the operational experience, and that's an area where IT probably shines better than the OT side.
So is telecom part of your IT organization?
Yes, so telecom is. I have actually 5 fiber deployment crews that work for me, and telecontrol is another part of my organization. And the idea is that was a no-brainer stuff, pulling that together, a huge amount of efficiencies that have been found in that. Because we all had our own organizational structures. We had the operational wide area network, we had the IT area network, we had the hidden networks that the OT folks didn't want the IT folks to know about. I think we had 14 networks. Yeah. So how do you pull those together? And then I think the next part of the journey is then how far do you go from there? And I think that's going to be different for a lot of companies. How far do you get into the substation automation? Do you stop at the communications, or do you take it a step further? How far do you get into the power control systems and the SCADA systems? Do you run the hardware and the application and let the operational folks take it from there and do the patches and all that, or do you do that? And I think that's going to be a bit dependent on your utility.
So I was going to go back to Kenny on a question, because I think that raises a topic that's really critical here, which is the whole issue of security. And you just touched on a pretty deep dive into some pretty important equipment and automation and so forth. And how have you guys been looking at the issue of cybersecurity? And I guess mostly, how are you organizing and how do you manage the cybersecurity issues at CenterPoint?
Yeah, I mean, security is top of mind. It's interesting. There are a lot of different perspectives on the protection of our grids. We manage the grid and secure the grid independent of how we secure our corporate IT. There are 2 different levels of security, 2 different designs, 2 different areas completely managed, unique to their responsibilities in our business. And so we have experts who for the last 30 years have been focused on grid security, grid management, grid security, and working with Siemens in our energy management system, making sure that our systems and their integration into our networks continue real time, day in and day out, 24/7, to have a high level of security. At the corporate level, you get so much more volume. I mean, at the corporate level, that's where all the attacks come. That's where you get high volume, high levels of crazy stuff comes in, comes out. And so our expertise is just different because they're seeing so much different stuff, right? And they're becoming very expert at reacting to all that stuff and having a plan to contain it and ship it away. But at the same time, they've become very, very good at, and a couple of them are here in the room today, at proactively designing infrastructural improvements that help further our job of reducing the risk. And risk management is a big part of what we focus on, understanding what those potential vulnerabilities are, knowing what we know in the industry, working with the national and the state and local governmental areas, listening and participating. We quantify our risk. We stay very focused on mitigation of those risks. But I tell you, what this really kind of starts to drive is resiliency, right? How resilient is our grids as we think through the future of technology? And right now we're building a brand new energy backup control center. That backup control center is designed to provide us in less than 1 hour full visibility in a second location. If somebody attacked one location, we're ready to move, and we have real-time access and we have real-time capabilities at that second center. But in addition to that fundamental requirement, what we're also looking at it as the backup for corporate, for metering systems, for distribution management systems, for telecommunication systems. So from a resiliency perspective, we always want to be live 2 places. So if you attack us, okay, great. Maybe someday you might be able to hit, but we're going to keep fighting, keep defending, keep holding you back. But if you do, resiliency becomes an alternative. How do we roll? Now, there's a 3rd level of resiliency that we've been working at really hard. Is imagine going back to that 1920s day when we didn't have the technology. We've got plans in place now. We don't even need a CIO. I'm sorry to tell you this, but Tom, your job is no longer needed.
That's great.
Because in the worst case scenario, we're going to go back to Morse code and simple transportation and simple routines that we used to do 30, 40 years ago when we didn't have technology. Make sure that we can get that grid back in place. So looking at it from the lowest level of technology to the highest level of technology kind of gives you a path of resiliency that hopefully for the long term will protect us.
And Bill, you've had a chance now to go through a project where you've done a lot of applications, right? You're doing a lot of automation up and down through the chain. I guess I would ask the question of you, which of those have proven to be the most challenging because of this transition between maybe a control center and the data center?
Most challenging. There's a lot of equivalency in challenge. It's a matter of sequencing and time and when we put certain things in. We took an opportunity to learn from many of our peers as we were installing our smart meters, which we've now decided not to call them smart meters, they're advanced meters, which we've had for 20 years. So, but when we were plugging the meters in, we said we need to deliver value on day one. What's in it for the customer? And so we had hired a company called Tendril, and they stood their web portal up, and then we distributed in-home displays the same day that we plugged the meter in, which, by the way, is a lesson learned, is not recommended. If you want to talk to me about that, I'll talk to you about that in the hall. That's a good lesson that we'll be sharing through our DOE reporting. But we distributed that so the customer, because the customer doesn't care about the meter. So we tried to learn from what was going on back in 2010. You couldn't read anything on a blog that wasn't bashing smart meters. So, but each project has had its level of integration, or in that case, we had to build some point-to-point interfaces that we've had to now undo and then go through our enterprise service bus. Security, I waver all over the place on security. Being the smart grid guy, I'm on somewhat of an island. We're trying to implement the NIST standards, which of course aren't even all ready. So, it's emerging standards, and so at some point you got to decide what you're going to build. We've had struggles going to the vendors to say, please open the hood and show me that you're following these standards that you've said you follow. And it's like, boy, I really don't want to open up the hood and show you that, or that's a lot of work to show you that I'm meeting. Just trust me.
Yeah.
So we've had difficulty doing some of those items, but each piece of integration and making sure and verifying that things are complying with the standards, that's kind of been about what the challenge has been along the way there. And in the past, we probably have not paid as much attention there as we probably should have. It's like, well, A is talking to B, a patch was put in, a patch was put in, a patch was put in. We patched it from the other side. 2 people retired and nobody knows what's in there. Yeah. So,
I understand. So, Wade, is this a common thing globally? I mean, as you look around the world, are there other countries that don't seem to have the same kinds of issues, or is this something you see everywhere?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the issues are more similar than different. The causes are a little bit different by different regions. So, to give you an example, as you're standing up all these applications, I was wondering whether you're going to talk about quality of existing data, things like that. But so, for example, data quality, as folks start to put in OMS, DMS, EMS systems, replacements, they start to look at management systems, the quality of the data going in, a lot of times if you don't do that cleaning or the scrub or get it right, it's going to directly impact the benefits realization on the back end. We've had that typically in North America from the manual records being converted over to automated. But for example, in Asia, the difference is, so in China in particular, the assets are going in so quickly that while they have an asset registry, while they have a GIS, they don't necessarily have the ability to get it in and get it in fast enough and in a quality that can make a lot of the advanced operational technologies pay off. So I mean, that's one place. One that we've seen that's probably more similar than different is security, though. And again, interfacing the legacy systems has been a challenge across all the regions. Asia's had the benefit of leapfrogging some of that with some of the advanced technologies they've been able to install in some regions as well. So I would say there are similar problems with different causes based on each region.
I thought the comments this morning from, I forget the gentleman's name, from FERC, was interesting because it's something that I've said. I spent a lot of time in distribution automation, and I know we used SNCs and Teleruptors where they had a Wi-Fi connection. It was like, oh my goodness, someone's going to break in through there and they're going to take down the whole grid. And I'm like, well, you just drive a truck into it and knock it down. And the concern about physical security. I mean, let's face it, 2 jets were flown into the World Trade Center. You place those jets into a couple of places around our country that doesn't take a rocket scientist to see a whole bunch of big sticks going into a place that
I got to fly home
big
today.
fence. So, I think we need to be as concerned about physical security as well. We're probably paying an unbalanced amount of attention to cybersecurity, and good old-fashioned.
That's because we're in the IT.
Good old-fashioned tactics will cause probably more damage than what could be done through those means.
Definitely would agree with that. And I think we heard yesterday in part of that same discussion about the impact and the possibilities for cyber attacks or even physical attacks, that the gas network is actually, probably even more vulnerable and more potentially destructive. So Tom, you have a gas affiliate company.
We do, yeah. We have Sask Energy. In fact, they're part of our smart grid deployment. We have gas and electrical coming back over our AMI solution. But we do, because of the diversity of the province, the physical is certainly a challenge for us. And one of the things that we have is, we talk about silos, the power industry and the power generation, they even had silos per each plant. Usually the person that was a plant manager was God at that particular plant. Mm-hmm. So to go in there and try putting some centralized standards around security, you'd have your ID badge that would work in one plant, the next plant was using palm recognition. You go to a hydro plant way up north, and there's nobody at the security desk. You signed in, and it was the honor system, right? And
it's a form of security
exactly,
itself. You have disparate security systems. So nobody can get in, and nobody can get in everywhere.
I'm sure the bad guys are going to sign in.
That's defense in depth.
Yeah.
But he'll be wearing a hard hat.
Yeah. So, and as you get further north, because you're such part of the community, the hydro dam was also the place for the main route for the skidoos to cross in the wintertime. And, the fishing spot, the best place to back the boats in was right through the power station yard there. So, all different types of security. And, you go into the power plant itself, they have the old relay room, which now they're modernizing. And as they put IP stuff in there, they still call it the relay room, but there's probably not as many relays in there today. But it's wide open. One of our main plants, it's a shortcut to the lunchroom, right? And, you think about...
Everyone here in this room is going to have to sign an NDA before leaving the door.
But you think about the vulnerabilities there. You just need one disgruntled employee, and they can go in there and wreak havoc, more so than a control room, because a control room... you can do a lot of stuff there, but the system will still operate. If you take the equipment in the relay room out, the plant's out of commission will take a long time to bring back up. So what does it take to put, a fence or a wall around there with, the IT sort of standard? I'm, as a CIO and also responsible for security, I don't have access to any of our data centers. I have to go in with somebody else in our company, because I have no need to be there other than to take tours there. And doesn't pass the smell test as far as needing access. So either that or they realize what kind of damage I'll do by poking at things when I walk through. But you think about taking away that change from a culture, people that are used to walking through there, the plant manager going wherever he wants or she wants in the plant and saying, no, you can no longer go in there. There's only 3 people that are allowed in that room now. That's a huge change. Mm-hmm.
We've only got a couple minutes left, but I think maybe we'll see if there's a question or two in the audience we can try to address. So anybody have something they'd like to...
Something's burning out there. I know it is.
Anybody want to know more about the details of how to take down the grid?
Something's burning.
Yeah. All right, well, I guess I'll give each of these guys a chance to just sort of, throw a few thoughts out there. We got a couple minutes left, and if we have any questions, go ahead and throw your hand up.
The utility industry is changing dramatically right now. If you go back in time, this was a muscle company. I mean, these companies were built off of hard work, sweat, putting poles in the ground, running wire, a lot of big construction projects, very physical work, very laborious work, very strong, masculine work, right? It's just the way it was 40, 50 years ago. All that's changing. Some of that work never goes away, but a lot of the work that we're designing today is changing the face of what a utility is going to be in the future. Maybe the word utility has to be replaced. Maybe we have to be changed in the name of what we are, what we represent in terms of society. We have to translate the value of what we're producing each and every day. We need to translate that into a language that the customer says, I get it. You know, we got to give it, we need to send it to them. Make sure that they really appreciate the work that we're doing. It's not all blood and sweat anymore. It's a lot more intellectual focus with data analytics, applications, deep solutions, looking at stuff with real-time fingers on systems and being able to produce things at a speed that we never ever thought we could do 10 years ago. And by the way, that speed's only going to get faster 5 years from now than where we are now. So I'm just thrilled to be part of this industry change that's going on. And I just think 3 to 5 years from now, I'd love to come back and tell you some great things we're going to be doing at our business, because the things we're doing right now are good. The things that I'll be doing in 3 years are really great. They're going to be really great. And you know, that's what makes me proud to be a participant in this industry.
I think we, tagging onto that, customer engagement. You know, we're not an industry that's used to doing literally any marketing. Show of hands, how many people in the room read their last bill insert from either the gas or the electric company? Not even one? Wow. Oh, one. Okay, we got a couple back there. All right. How many people? Maybe they read it electronically, but you know, it's not an effective technique to communicate with customers. We've tried a variety of ways to reach out, and even through our project, we spent a good deal of money marketing and trying to get customers engaged and to accept the products that we're doing. We are right in the heart of Midtown Kansas City, a good portion of our projects in a economically downtrodden area, but we've really struggled to get customers engaged and find ways to do that. So we've got these systems, and ultimately we have to have customers accept it. And if we're going to have energy efficiency and demand response that's, you know, beyond the meter, and customers participating, and you know, and Kansas City is in the heart of you know, in the heartland where, you know, we don't have the pricing that you have on the coast, we don't have the competitive nature that you have down in Texas, and we have, you know, pretty stodgy regulatory market that's like, well, let's see what everybody else is doing before we even put our toe in the water. So you know, we're usually pressing them, and then so they'll question, well, you're going to put all these fancy tools in to communicate to all these customers, but not everybody has a smartphone, you know, so who's paying for that? So, you know, it's we still have those regulatory hurdles to get over.
You run those numbers, it's probably cheaper to include a smartphone for those customers.
Right. Well, that's we need to think new ways like that, and we don't tend to be the type that do think those ways. So we need, I heard this morning about the, you know, hiring the candy company and, you know, create some eye candy. When we have the product that people rely on the most, and, you know, but we've also been a monopoly and haven't had to market it. You know, you pretty much got to buy it from us, and there may be a day where you don't have to buy it from us.
It's here. Tom?
Yeah, you know, if you think 15 years ago, what the internet looked like, and the eBays and the Amazons and all these different things. And you think about today's generation that is coming to our companies that have never known life without the internet, without a computer, versus those of us that are trying to be CIOs and CTOs that, you know, got the internet in our 30s and are trying to decide how it's going to look in the future. Looking around the challenges the internet had relative to massive data and how you mine that data and how you get it. Now we think nothing about going on to Google or Bing and typing in something and it finds the information right away. I would suggest that what we're deploying today is just the start of the industry. And maybe, you know, if you look out here 5 years and 10 years from now, and probably not even that long, if you look at how do we organize the, you know, all the data that we have coming in some organized fashion so that it can be found, do we need, you know, big databases, or do we need tools like web crawlers and things like that mine stuff internal to our company? How do we make it real for our employees of tomorrow so that, you know, they just need to ask something like they're asking Siri on their iPhone? You know, do I need an umbrella today? Siri knows where you are, knows that you're asking about the weather, and reports back, yeah, you need an umbrella. Why do we need to force employees to check one of the following 3 things, and if you know the hexadecimal equivalent of it, you can put it in, and you know, that's a lot of the tools that we have today in our companies, and I'd suggest that 5 years from now, a lot of that's going to change. A lot of tools that haven't been invented are going to be invented and bought into our industry as the need arises. So stay tuned. Very exciting.
And maybe just on that point, I mean, the session was on IT, OT, blending the silos for maximum benefit. We're very early on. Fortunately, thanks to pioneers like these folks on the panel, we have a lot of tools today that we didn't have a few years ago in terms of reference architectures, in terms of use case repositories, things that we can use to collectively advance the state of the industry to go forward, and that's proven to be very valuable. So I would recommend that everyone look to those references that are out there from the projects that have been undertaken. They're very valuable. I think going forward, though, it'll be interesting to see. I think that the one thing we've heard more and more now is we're starting to get critical mass on data. We're starting to see some early results from a lot of the projects that are underway. And I think everyone is anticipating the wave towards analytics and using analytics to kind of do yet one more generational update or change to what we have in the field is coming.
So I'm going to follow on with that. One comment, and you'll be able to attend some of the analytics sessions that are later on today and tomorrow. But I think one of the things that we started to see is that when you start putting that data that you've got into some format that's easily accessible, usable, that starts to bring together people from all parts of the organization. So I think, personally, I will look at data analytics as at least one catalyst for at least a shared value proposition in these investments that will span the organization in a way that's quite productive. Anyway, I want to thank the panelists and really appreciate you guys joining us today, and great observations. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So this has been the official first part of the general session. Thank you again for that entertaining and fruitful conversation above all. A couple of things. We're running 25 minutes late. So if you go to your guide, and it was just worth it. Thanks again. And you're not to blame for it anyway. But if you go. 5 of those. Okay, good. Well, the smallest amount, right? If you go to your guidebook and go to update content, we push the day back a little. So we're essentially all the schedules will be updated in the guidebook, so you are at the right time at the right place. We're going to be reconvening back here at 4:15 and learn about how Alliander is going to use IT to sort of transition their energy business and how Accenture proposes to cut through the data flurry. Yeah. So thanks and have a good day till afternoon. Thank you again.